Now, what am I good at? I can shred on the drums, and I'm a marketing whiz.
All right, welcome back to Reel It In. Today I'm joined with Oren Schauble. Just asked you how to pronounce your last name and already beefed it. Oren has 10 years of experience in brand building and advising e-commerce brands in luxury and CPG. He also has a sick newsletter, Product People, where he drops in your inbox and gives you awesome insights in the product world. Oren, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Coming to you live from Orange County and excited to be talking product, talking branding, and seeing where it goes.
Yeah, Orange County weather sounds nice on this cold New York day. Today we're going to be talking about product development, brand building, how marketers can understand product building better. But before we do that, for those that aren't acquainted with you yet or haven't got your TikToks on their For You page like I have, could you give our listeners a quick rundown on how you got into product dev and like a little elevator pitch of what you're doing today?
Yeah, for sure. So my actual degree was in design and sociology. So I had a little bit of a background in design. I started as a designer agency side, like a graphic designer, ended up becoming a creative director. This was in New York and kind of lifestyle products like liquor and CPG. Then I moved over to tech and worked in marketing and kind of in high tech for a long time. We helped build the consumer camera drone category over a couple of years and bring that into retail. And then started a product development agency with some friends of mine who I'd worked in that industry with called Gwyn Partners, where we do high-tech product development. And now that's about a 45-person contract engineering agency in Austin, where we really focus on robotics and autonomy. And now that business is kind of rolling and is successful, I also work on just a number of other projects in all kinds of different worlds, whether that's toys or CPG, beverage, fashion, across the board, and then and then make content about product development, this kind of modern content world that we're in, and I'm excited to be working on different projects in different industries every day, and then sharing as much as I can on TikTok and the newsletter.
Yeah, I know the TikTok is great. As we were talking off mic before, I've got a couple of your videos before, but super fascinating, especially like if you're new to this world of product development. Like you break it down in a super straightforward way that I think is really helpful for guys like me who don't really understand this type of stuff. Yeah,
and that's what's it's funny. I worked pretty hard to I had like basically 100 bad videos before I started making good videos, and what I really found is that it's about like the shorter that it is, right? 15 seconds to 60 seconds. How do I just establish credibility and then present one concept or idea and then just keep it rolling? But I think it's a wonderful platform. I know in my bio, I generally say 10 years of experience, but I do that to not sound ancient, but like I have like much longer than that, but coming at it as like an older person has been an interesting experience.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of people think it's a young person's game on TikTok, but I don't know. Some of my favorite creators are in their 60s and 70s. So, some older people, find a nice little hobby later in life. It's a beautiful app.
Yeah, completely. And you can learn, you can learn anything you want on there. So I love it.
Yeah, let's dig into the meat and potatoes here. As I've said, like I'm not familiar with product development, especially like physical product development. Like I work in software, so any like product dev experience or knowledge I have is based in that. I'm sure you have some like hot takes generally on product dev, but let's start at a super high level. Like, what makes a successful product? If there was like 2 or 3 things that are always have to be true for a product to be successful, like what are those boxes you're checking?
Yeah, and so I think a couple things, and like there's so many products and so many avenues and things now that there's 100 ways to make something successful. But I think the ones to really narrow in on is creating a great user experience in a niche. And basically saying that, okay, and by niche, I mean just zoning in on a target customer base that seems almost incredibly small. It's like, all right, I want to really service chefs who are cutting onions mostly, or, or like, I want a certain, if I'm doing a hair product, it's like a super specific type of hair. Or if I'm doing a sports brand, it's like, we're really zoned in on lacrosse. It's like, how do you establish a really specific area and offer those people something that they don't have that's really well tailored to them, and the message is tailored to them. And there's a number of ways to do that, right? And I basically have a chart when I work with, clients and projects where it'll be like, all right, well, do you want to offer a cheaper alternative to something on the market? Do you want to offer a luxury alternative that offers a better experience? Do you want to make it more extreme in its branding? What are all these different ways you can think about how you make something better than what exists already? And I think for anyone approaching any category, it's, it really starts with, okay, I want to make something in this industry. How do I explore that niche, buy a bunch of things, and really think critically about what could be done better.
Yeah, so you need like some sort of angle to differentiate yourself. I always think, are you familiar? Because I know you're big on TikTok. You got to be familiar with like the Stanley Cup. You know what I'm talking about, with the handle and the,
100%.
yeah, and it always, water bottles are always fascinating to me because it seems like there's a new D2C water bottle brand every single day, and it's like, what is, and because there's Yeti, there's Stanley, there's Hydro Flask, and like they all keep your drinks cold and hot the same amount of time. And it seems to me like they're just competing on brand at the end of the day. Like they're all high quality products, but like if you're going to go with one over the other, there's similar price points. Like they're competing out as brand.
Yeah, well, I think there's ways to differentiate that are based on the product, and then there's also ways to differentiate that are based on who you're marketing to. You can take the exact same product and say, I'm making this specific to, Polish people or whatever it is, to try and get to a specific niche. And then there's also channels. And I think what the Stanley one being interesting is they leverage short form video better and faster than the competition. And they offer the same exact product, but they took advantage of a distribution channel without a superior product. And you start to look at that matrix of how do you differentiate. If you can't find anything, you're like, I can't make it cheaper, I can't make it better, then it's like, all right, do you have an advantage in distribution? And that can come from, I'm going to take this into mass retail, or I'm going to take this into niche retail in the way that other people aren't. Or is there an angle of like a new platform, the way people are seeing TikTok? And I think any of those is a way to win. And the water bottle market is a perfect one because it's cyclical. People are always buying one, and you're not going to stand out. Hydro Flask really focused on, hey, like the concept of a product experience, like, hey, we're going to keep your thing cold for like 2 years later, and I think that's the only real product differentiation we've seen in that niche, right? And Yeti essentially at its beginning really focused on the Southern market in a way that was really unique and crushed it. And that's in my mind, I talk to people all the time about this. I was living in Texas prior. I'm like, there's so many brands and angles and opportunities that choose to market themselves essentially to the coast instead of endear themselves to a massive chunk of America, that can be done really through just marketing, attention, focus, and the type of content you produce.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, especially with Yeti, like they did go for that Southern market, and then it trickled up to a lot of like people in the North who like want to like attach themselves to that culture a little bit. Like they're, fans of the culture, and that helped like Yeti really like spread.
Well, if you attach yourself to a Heartland product or whether it's like the Rust Belt or the South or whatever that is the mainstream. There are so many Americans in those things that you can become mainstream from that it actually filters out to the coast. I actually think that's a better approach. It's one, I work with a brand that's it's like a Western themed women's brand. And that is like 100% the case. It's like they're very popular in all these cities. And then like the cyclical trends come where that's actually popular on the coast and they get a boost from it.
Yeah. Just generally like Western cowboy is so hot right now. Yellowstone.
People are, and that happens like every 3 years,
Yeah.
But in a good part of America, it's just there all the time.
Yeah. So like pivoting over to like the actual product development process, how so you go through this exercise, you figure out like an angle you want to take. How are you then like going to validate that new product? How are you going to like make sure that there is like a need for it or that it is resonating? Like, what's that process look like?
Yeah. And that's where I think we have all these really unique opportunities in our current era. And the two really unique ones are access to the global supply chain through Alibaba and Pietra and some of these aggregators, which just didn't exist like 20 years ago. You couldn't just go find 100 factories to quote against each other. And then the second is being able to test in short form video. Like if you asked me that question like 8 years ago, I'd be like, well, you're going to get $2,000 or $3,000. You're going to set up these type of Facebook campaigns, and you're going to try and validate if you can pay enough money to reach people to get it at like a reasonable cost level. And then you need to do another validation to see if you can scale that. But with short form video now, it's like the easiest time ever to validate a product, because if you go, no matter what your expertise is, and you go make 100 videos with one sample of your product, and you use just yourself and a couple people of different backgrounds, looks, and feels, and you just make one of all the different popular content types for a month or two, and you place that out there. You put it on TikTok, you put it on YouTube Shorts, you put it on Instagram Reels, put it on Facebook Reels, put it on Twitter as well. Like you're going to know if you have resonance, because it might take you 30 videos or 40 videos, but if you go through that whole thing and no one's interested or hits you up on how to buy it or anything like that, you have nothing. But if, on your 10th video or your 40th video, you're like, oh, I got 1 million views and I got, 800 email subscribers, then you're like, oh, I have a thing. And so I think that's what people need to do. And I think the thing that most folks aren't focused on now is they'll go say, oh, I did 3 videos and I don't have product market fit. And it's like, all right, well, like the real answer is 100. And guess what? Like you can do that with your phone. They don't have to be high quality, or you can hire a UGC creator to do it. A lot of them are really cheap right now. And I think that that's the best way to validate. It's like, do I put content out about it, and do people actually, does it resonate, and do people want to buy it?
Yeah, I mean, you're so right. It's like becomes so easy with like Alibaba and all these people taking advantage of it, like drop shippers and stuff like that. Like, 20 years ago, you just literally couldn't do that. It would take a large investment and a lot of grunt work to like even manufacture one product. And now it's like just figure out what is a popular item and go to Alibaba and then just
or if you want to make your
more.
own individual thing, I think like a lot of people, think of AliExpress and drop shipping and things like that. But then this is the glorious part about Alibaba is it's every factory in China, essentially, or let's say 70% of the factories in China are on there, no matter what they make. And a lot of them focus on custom items, and they'll have a bunch of sample things out there. But this is how all the things in the world get made. And if you don't want to use them, there's ThomasNet for the US, there's Europages for Europe. Pietra kind of aggregates a bit of all of them. And so it's just like that, having that at your fingertips is just like such a superpower. And having all of those people knowing they have to compete with all of these other factories out there and offer lower MOQs or offer more consultative service. Like I think it's part of this concept that all these large brands we grew up with are basically being splintered away by these little micro 0.01% of market share from all these smaller brands. That's only going to continue because the barrier to entry is now so low. And the real thing that matters is distribution. And that's also being made easier because of short form video.
Yeah, I know. The barrier to entry being so low is like, I don't know, if I'm someone who wants to start a brand, start selling a certain product, like I'm intimidated because there's probably so many in my space that like you really need to figure out like what your competitive advantage is going to be if you can even figure it out.
Well, it's find that niche. It's literally going through those things. I do think there's a lot of, you could say, hey, I'm going to be better at one channel than everybody else. I'm going to be better at Google ads. I'm going to be better at TikTok. I'm going to be better at regional retail is a super underrated one. Like if you make a product for cycling and it's like, and you're in the Pacific Northwest, it's like, cool. Can I get into 20 Pacific Northwest, like Oregon, Seattle bike shops to sell this product and support that really well because no one else is really doing that? Like there's all these angles, and really it's about running down that list of angles and being like, what will I actually execute on? And and I just kind of keep working on master lists of this stuff every day.
Yeah, I know. You seem definitely like a student, a forever student of of the game here.
Well, it is ever shifting. I feel like that's now every career, right? Whether that's software development or product development or any of those things, it's like, okay, all the tools are moving so fast. And if you at some point say you get curmudgeon-y about it and you're like, wow, I need to learn that new thing. Like, we were chatting off camera before this, but I had this video about AI. I was immediately curmudgeon-y about this. I'm like, this is never going to be like a thing. It's not going to impact me. And I'm like, God damn it. Like, just like everything, if I had just gotten on TikTok a year earlier, which I hadn't thought would be a thing, I'd be 3 times the size I am now. Like, it's just like, how much can you just find out if there is value in these, explore it. I probably spent 10 hours exploring AI and now feel like I have a decent understanding of where this could go and what it means for me. And I think people just need to adopt that attitude, even though it's natural for people to not embrace change.
Yeah, you brought it up. So let's get into it now, the AI thing. Because like for me, I'm mainly in content marketing. So I've been using ChatGPT for a lot of shit recently. It's sick if you use it correctly. I'm really want to get your take on like AI in product dev, where you see it fitting. Do you think we're close? Do you think it's viable now?
Yeah, well, I think now it's a great tool for inspiration for like ID. So basically, if you're like, all right, cool, I need to find the look of a new headphone. I want to get 40 different approaches or angles or interesting things. That's at like the mood boarding stage. It's useful. It's useful for like social content and things like that, product photos, things of that nature. But that's really the core. I think that for it to really be useful in product development, it would need to be able to have both a visual understanding and then an understanding of materials and what's possible and be able to take those level of inputs. But I do think that's where it's headed, because why wouldn't it be if you look at, okay, I can 3D print a thing with like a Form Labs or somebody like that. And they have these 10 materials, they have these processes, and I want to create thing X. And then if AI can take the inputs of what are those materials and processes that are capable of, and here's what I'm trying to achieve, and then give me things, that's where it gets really interesting. I don't think we're there, but I at least want to be aware enough that I think that that's the possibility. So, we can think ahead of these things as they happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a powerful tool for like inspiration. Like you said, that's what I get the most use out of it is like, you have creative blocks. You get writer's block, you get, product developer blocks. That's a term I just created. It just helps you like brainstorm and get an idea down on paper that you can build off of. And that's always the hardest part, is getting started.
Yeah. And I think that like right now I use Pinterest constantly. Pinterest is my most used app by far. And it's just so useful because it has this feature where like you create boards. And I have like hundreds of boards. I have boards for materials and by project and by, idea. And it has this thing where it's like, see more like this basically. And you click it and it's like, they give you extremely accurate, like, okay, like here's other industrial design of phones or whatever it is. And so it's like, but that is always someone else's ideas being shown to you. And AI is still someone else's ideas, but they're remixed essentially. And so it's another step of inspiration where now we'll be like, okay, cool, just take some of those images we like in Pinterest, pop them into Midjourney, and just see what comes of it and kind of see where that goes as kind of an extension of ideas that we wouldn't normally have in the creative process.
Yeah, it's just like adding like 10 people to your team, basically.
It's just, it's an interesting tool. I look at all these things as tools, right? And it's good to know what you have in your toolkit.
Yeah. So want to pivot a little bit more to like the marketing side of things, because I'm curious about how you view the relationship between product and marketing. So in my world in SaaS, there's usually like a product marketing manager that serves as kind of the go-between between both those teams. How do you see that relationship working in like CPG luxury? Is it usually a good relationship, usually bad? Like what makes a successful partnership there?
Yeah, and one thing I've noticed is they don't have traditional like product marketing people where it's like, hey, my job is to really relay the features of this and then connect the product team and like the tickets, and like it's not quite to that extent, but I think it should be, because I think what really happens is, in a lot of these other industries, they'll develop a thing and they'll be like, how can we differentiate it? And I really think from the beginning, like those marketing points, like we talked about, is like, okay, if we're going to go cheaper, what's the angle? And then how are we going to then and then what does that mean for our content strategy, et cetera? And so I do think that just like product and marketing need to be super intrinsically tied together. And, and I think that we see a little bit less of that in some of these other niches, but I think that's 100% the way that it has to be. But I think now the way I've liked to talk about marketing recently is really thinking about it as more like telling a narrative story. And saying, okay, from the beginning, like here are our pillars and the points that we want to get across. And then almost looking at like a TV show or a movie and saying, who are the characters that are going to tell that story? Whether it's our founders or our UGC creators or influencers or whatever it is. What are the enemies we're positioning ourselves against? What are the events that are going to happen? Like we're going to have this launch or attend this show, or we're going to do this collaboration. Like how does that overlap with other franchises or other people doing that kind of thing? What are the channels it goes on? And I think that really needs to be happening from the beginning of the product development phase, because building in public is so absolutely important right now, where it's like you have to be, from the moment you have your idea, you need to be sharing it out there. Like people are always like, they're afraid their ideas are going to get stolen and things like that. Like your ideas are going to get stolen absolutely anyway. And so I think that the idea that we should be like telling this and working through this needs marketing at that level of involvement from the beginning, and short form video from the beginning, because the audience that you're going to build from telling that story is just going to be really impactful when you're launching.
Yeah. In my experience, I've been in situations where the product development team will make a new tool, new product, new feature, without kind of like looping anyone in. And it's like, here it is, go out and market this, sell this new tool. And it's like, you can't find product market fit. Like the message isn't resonating. You can try a bunch of different angles, but it's like, maybe if marketing was more involved in the beginning, this tool wouldn't have even been developed, wouldn't have been created, because there's just like, you can't see because like that marketing person could say, there's no market for this, or we can't sell this.
Feedback. So to your point about, I know you work a lot with connecting creators with these brands. It's like, if you have a creator from inception of idea in sampling, and they're telling that story right away, and then they're being like, hey, this is the feedback I'm getting from consumers as I tell this story, and that's tied into your loop of finishing that product. Like that level of feedback is, again, one of those things that just absolutely did not exist 5 years ago. And so let's get that in the cycle. Let's use that to our advantage. And I do think that brands should be having a creator, whether it's a member of the brand or a third party, like from like R&D phase. Yeah,
I know we're seeing a lot more with brands, product sampling to creators, just for like reviews and honest feedback, not even for content, like before it hits the shelves, because they just want to understand like, how are these creators who see so many different products in, like, for example, like a lot of them will work with hundreds of cosmetics brands. Like that's the industry that you see a lot of it in. So sampling it out to these creators that have worked with so many brands and seen so many different products and know how to like best position it in their content, giving feedback, because these people are really on like the front lines of this world, of this short form video world. And that's the way, a brand is going to be able to sell this product. So getting their feedback is absolutely crucial to these brands.
Completely agree.
Yeah. So, we were talking a little bit about short form video. Super curious, like what your take is on the mix there between like investing like heavily in UGC versus like super expensive photo shoots, commercials, things like that. Like, how do you see those working together? Is it different for every product? Is there one that like brands should be focusing on more?
I think I would take the time to do at least one really nice photo video shoot so you can test it on your like website and product detail pages versus more organic content. But when it comes to your daily, weekly, it's just extremely hard to execute on brand like high quality content at scale. And there's brands that do it. ASRV is a good example. There's a few people that really have like, they take the time, they've told their brand story right. But like, I think that is just a large hill to climb, especially for new brands. And I would just focus on making more UGC or more just casual content. You know, I tried this when I launched my TikTok, as I was making videos, I was having them edited. I thought that would resonate better. And then you know what resonates better is like me in front of a green screen, like wherever I happen to be. And I think that it's kind of worth testing that. But I think what we're going to find is a lot of it's going to be that unproduced content. And if it is like a produced thing, it doesn't need to be some crazy high production thing. I think where that comes into play is if you have the distribution mechanism and you have something high produced that's viral enough that it can like push you out farther because of its amazingness. And I don't think there's many examples of something of that actually exist, then do it. But if not, focus on making more things that are affordable to you and staying consistent.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of flipped because if you think of like the AI we've been talking about, all the tools that exist, all the softwares, all the editing tools, you can make something like high production without spending a lot these days. And now the harder thing is like creating these rough casual videos. That's what's become harder because that takes time and dedication and consistency. And it's a weird flip-flop there.
I think people work too hard at it. I think really and this is kind of what I've learned as I've now, getting into the hundreds and hundreds of videos, is that like most of my videos now, I don't spend more than 15 minutes on anything ever. And I think where and it's like getting that approach to it and then being like, okay, well, how do you set yourself up for success to do that? And really that's having somebody, whether it's you or somebody else, spending time on concepts, being like, here's 50 or 20 concepts, which is really just based on what other people are doing on TikTok. And then doing your pre-production, which is like my pre-production is screenshotting 4 things from Pinterest, essentially, or from wherever website I'm talking about. And for brands, it may be, something simple or setting up a set. But like, if your goal is really, hey, we're going to create 2 or 3 things a day and we're not going to spend more than 20 minutes on them, then that's an hour spending on content every day. And if you're telling your marketing team that you're going to spend an hour on content every day, they'd be shocked. But I think that is what the formula is. And if your marketing team is literally spending an hour creating, they're spending an hour or 2 prepping, and then the rest of the day is doing their other activities. Like, I think that is kind of the way to approach that, this angle now.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say for anyone, you definitely know this, for content creators, for brands, it's consistency over quality, like every single time, because you're going to get insights, if you're consistently posting every day, and even if they're rough, and if the video, the content is really different every time, or at least you have enough diversity in the types of content you're doing, you're going to get insights and oftentimes like be surprised at what performs well. But you just got to like do the reps. You got to be consistent in creating that content.
I think you mentioned is what's key is that like, it's about experimenting in that content set that you have. It's like, okay, I'm not making the same thing or following the same thing. We're trying just a ton of different things, different topics, different personalities. That's what I see people fall into too much is they just make the same video again and again and again. And if it works, awesome. But also just keep throwing things at the wall. And I think that if you're able to do that and say, we're also just experimenting very frequently inside this, and there's so many ways to experiment. You can just go through your For You feed and be like, there's so many types of videos. I think that's powerful. And that and the repurposing of video across all these different networks is like I think just basically the plan for success. Like doing that and scaling that as big as you can get it is such a better use of time and funds than any level of advertising right now. Like I recommend brands, especially when they're starting out, even bigger brands who are just spending tons of money. It's like build your organic video and retarget. And like everything else is like only things that have maximum ROAS.
Yeah, definitely. I know there's like, especially given like the advertising landscape right now. I mean, it's a much safer bet.
Yeah, well, it's so much more affordable. It's almost crazy to think about because people say, well, I can only post so much on my account. I'm like, yeah, well, what if you had 10 accounts? Like, what if those hours were multiplied? That we just talked about. Like, if you wanted to fill 8 of those hours with content, you had 3 brand accounts with different voices or personalities. Like the scalability of organic content right now is people aren't thinking outside the box, and they should.
Yeah, I always like to end on this question. It's a very big galaxy brain type of question. So 5 years from now, we want to figure out who are the winners and who are the losers. So 5 years from now, and you can look at this through a product lens, a marketing lens, a TikTok lens, like whatever you want to do. what's going to separate like the winners from the losers? What is that one or two things that they're going to be doing differently that helps them succeed?
I think it is people who have taken their in real life strategy as seriously as their online strategy. Basically, and by that, and also looked at it with that same degree of innovation or out of the box thinking, and been like, all right, how do we get in front of eyeballs that are on the ground walking into retail or around our areas and neighborhoods with the same interesting, kind of innovative look as what we've done online? I think those are going to be the companies that are going to be really interesting. I think the pure DTC thing is completely dead. I think the pure big legacy retail is also like, in a complicated place. I think there's going to be some innovative things that come out of people who are able to do both well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we're already seeing it. Like everyone during pandemic was, digital revolution, whatever. A couple years after, we're already seeing like in real life is the way. That's what people prefer, and that's what's going to continue to like garner the most attention and most people's time.
Yeah, and I think there's just a lot of opportunity there now with the way leases are structured and working together with other brands, and the fact that big retail wants to bring new customers or online customers into their stores with new experiences. Is like, how are you thinking outside the box of that well? Yeah,
for sure. Well, Oren, it was so great having you. This was an awesome conversation. We'll link to your socials and your website in the show notes so people can find you. But is there anything else you want to plug right now? Anything exciting coming down the pike?
No, not much. Just, the productworld.xyz is where I have the product people newsletter, and I'm Oren Meets World on all social, and that's all.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, we'll catch you next time on Reel It In. Thanks so much, Oren.